Greetings, everyone. It is GleeCon back at you again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we ran through some more quests with Farinel, and it was pretty good. We did the quest on Fenris Isle, and that involved Raven, something like that. Raven Crest, maybe. We didn't actually kill him, but we did a lot of his base. We've also been reading through the Alliance playthrough, the Alliance Horde Player's Guide, the Alliance Player's Guide, which is Dungeons and Dragons campaign source book, and we're on chapter 6, which is all about the history and culture of the various races. We did the High Elves the last time, and now we're going to take a little bitty mini one on Half Elf history. They don't have a deep history. They have essentially zero history in the actual game, other than, say, Eretor, for instance. But in some burgeoning romances between the humans and the elves, but we have some history to talk about, so stay a while and listen as we talk half-elf history. 3,000 years ago, there was the first meeting between the High Elves and the Arathi humans. Yes, the elves were begging the humans for help, and many found them very fair to look upon. Haughty but beautiful elven ladies, meeting tall, strong, young human farmers and soldiers. But what were the results of these dalliances? Half-elves, often abandoned or mistreated by those same elven women who found the humans so handsome and strong. In Theramore, a drunken half-elf kept me up most of the night telling me stories about the early days. Folk tales, really, without a lick of truth, but they do tell you where their heads are at. The first one they tell is the story of the Silver Wolf Elf, the first half-elf child ever abandoned by the elves. Wolves found him in the wilderness and raised him, and he became the greatest warrior in Azeroth. Great story, right? That's until he caught sight of a human city and was enamored by it. The humans greeted him, then they waylaid him, blinded him, and forced him to row a galley ship for close to 150 years before he finally died at the oars. Then there's the tale of Starfeller, wisest half-elf ever, who hated the world so much that he built a great tower to take him to the stars. Unfortunately, the stars rejected him and cast him back to Earth, where his fall created a great crater. This is pure fiction, of course, but it demonstrates one painful truth that I learned that night. Half-elven tales rarely have happy endings. For many years, centuries perhaps, the offspring of elf and human lived as wandering exiles. However, the recent troubles have gone a long way to change that. Folk of all sorts banded together in the Third War, and most came to believe that the content of one's character is more important than who his mommy and daddy are. Half-elves fought against the Alliance's enemies alongside everyone else. Unfortunately, the half-elves were left in a sorry state after the war. Jaina, ever the open-hearted one, brought many half-elf refugee families into Theramore. Despite the progressing nature of people's thoughts, it wasn't a popular decision. Not that the city hasn't benefited from the half-elves' presence. They're hard workers with a lot of skills. Some appreciate that. However, enough people keep their distance from them on the streets that many half-elves have left Theramore to wander the wilds of Kalimdor. I think what the half-elves would really like is a piece of land to call home, a half-elven country. It kind of makes me think of Liberia. Excuse me. Janet Proudmoore, while sympathetic, has told them that until the truce stabilizes between the Alliance and the Horde, it's unwise for any people to try to establish a homeland. It's good advice, but not everyone is listening. Perhaps the majority are content to wait for their dream, but on the other hand, but the course of history is rarely steered by the contented. On the other hand, the prejudices of elf and man are softening, and there is hope that in a few generations, half-elves may be treated as welcome equals by both of their parent races. One interesting tale I've heard is of a half-elf named Finol Goldensword. This woman is the daughter of the high elf mage Kilnar Goldensword of Dalaran, and an unknown human, rumors say, it says it was Dalen Proudmoore, though few humans believe the tale. When Dalaran and her mother fell to the scourge, Finol tried to unite the surviving humans and high elves around her. Unfortunately, the humans mistrusted her, and the disdainful high elves refused to follow a half-breed. Stung but not dissuaded, Finol refused to give up. She calculated that success would bring more people to her banner than her bloodline ever could, and has fought a guerrilla war against the scourge ever since. Half-elf culture, I'm sorry. Half-elves are too few and scattered to have a united culture or society. It's tough to say, half-elves do this or half-elves do that. Still, we can make some generalizations. The half-elf mindset is patient, practical, pessimistic, and not given to music and art. In their tales, heroes triumph by being patient or clever. In these stories, half-elves who aspire to greatness usually die horrible deaths. You've heard the stories of lazy half-elven wanderers. The people who tell those stories have never seen the skill of half-elven carpenters in Theramore. They build houses with wood that are as sturdy as dwarves with stone, as one might expect from a combination of elven respect for wood and human determination. They've only begun learning how to build ships, and I'll tell you, even the master shipbuilders of Theramore are impressed. They've always been good weavers, unmatched except by the elves, and half-elven fashion is much less gaudy and much more practical. If you want a cloak that will keep you warm and dry in a winter storm, go to a half-elf tailor. Okay, pause, sidebar for some half-elf sayings. Life is too long to hold a grudge and too short to forget an injustice. Never mistake foolishness for passion. It is not hard to find one's purpose in the world. Liking it, however, is next to impossible. Elves grow arrogance like a forest, while humans dine on the dust and stench of their cities. Okay. It's like they're resentfully better than both. Although many half-elves distrust magic, that may be better suited to the arcane than any other race in Azeroth. They combine the high elves' capacity for practicing arcane magic with a reluctance to embrace it to a foolhardy extent. However, with the destruction of the mage colleges of Lordaeron and the rise of the Blood Elves, they are even less willing than they might be to embrace their magical heritage. It is risky to make generalizations. Most half-elves haven't preserved their past, but there are a few isolated enclaves who have. Most half-elves are passive and nurture a persecution complex, but the ones who buck that stereotype do so in a way that shakes the world. If half-elves continue to embrace the Alliance, it's quite possible that their culture will experience a renaissance that transforms them into one of the shining lights of the world. On the other hand, a few half-elves have responded to their historic persecution by siding with the Horde. Some organizations within the Alliance open their arms to half-elves in attempts to arrest this development. One, pause for two things. One, arrested development. Nice. Two, I think it would be a really cool expansion idea to open up the factions, to open up the races. Like, Horde can be whatever, and Alliance can be whatever. For achievements, selfishly, that would be really fun. But also, like, the story would be cool. Like, just disillusioned races that have moved their way over, and then you create like an exclave within each or next to each city and whatever. Like, it could be done. I think it would be a cool storyline. The cult of the Holy Light tries to mend the breaches between races. This is a good thing. Although I hate to think about it, if the race of half-elves continue to suffer nothing but misfortune, they might decide that the Horde is the only place left for them. Alright, and there's a little bit of half-elf knowledge out there. What a character knows about half-elf history and culture depends on his intelligence and training, which a knowledge check represents. A hero who makes an appropriate knowledge check knows the following information about half-elves at the indicated DCs. Alright, so pretty much everybody has the local knowledge enough to know that half-elves are always the result of the union of humans and half-elves, or the union of two half-elves. You can recognize someone on site as a half-elf. And most people with any geographic or local knowledge know that most half-elves live in Theramore or are wanderers. Alright, now a few people know, and a decent chunk of adventurers know, so like a few people with architecture and engineering know that you can distinguish between half-elf and high-elf architecture, and half-elf's craftsmanship from human craftsmanship. So yeah, a few people with that knowledge, or like people that specialize in that, most of them can tell the difference. Okay, cool. So we have another episode in the pipe 5x5, and as always, you have my appreciation for tuning in and watching another episode of Lore of Warcraft. See you guys.